Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon joins me and we're going to talk about the beautiful, terrific Victor Wembanyama and Nikola Jokic games from over the weekend. We're going to talk about the Phoenix Suns and how much trouble they are in. And we're going to talk about the Detroit Pistons and whether or not they just might be good. Bryce, I'm sure, is going to enjoy having a conversation for once about whether or not the Pistons might actually be good. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What is this going to be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? How are you? B Bobbler, always here with us again. The only actual agenda I have in the NBA space. I know we're talking Pistons today. That is not my agenda. My agenda is B Bobbler. Sam, I have a very important question for you. I need you to grade the appropriateness of my reaction to an incident in my household today. Can we do that here quickly? So for lunch today, I was going to have one of my favorites, broccoli and cheese soup from what's the restaurant? Oh my gosh, I just blanked on it. Oh my gosh, I ruined this so much.
Doesn't matter. Don't get bogged down in the details.
No,
Here we go.
I was gonna make a joke about how it was 3.5 hours away, so the broccoli and cheese soup I was gonna have to have was not a fresh bowl in-house. Panera, thank you, Adam Perry. Panera bread, you guys are the best. Panera bread, closest Panera bread is actually 3.5 hours away. Anyway, I have to microwave it because I don't have one close. 2 minutes in, stir it. 2 minutes in the microwave, stir it again. I go for the final 2 minutes, Sam, and I knock it over and spill it with the cover and spill out 80% of my broccoli and cheese soup that I'm so excited to have. That's the incident. I need you to grade and tell me if my reaction was appropriate. I take the container that's still 20% full and chuck it into the sink, splattering everywhere on the sink and the counter and on my cell phone. My wife offers to help me clean, which I refuse. My wife offers a more efficient way of cleaning, which I also refuse. My wife offers me to make me a different lunch, which I also refuse. And I refuse to eat lunch at all in any capacity out of spite of this incident. As a 37-year-old man, is that an appropriate reaction to me spilling my broccoli and cheese soup?
So the answer is no, obviously. But here's what I will say. Your reaction in terms of not allowing Ranny to help you clean it, I think is correct. And Ranny is a saint for being willing to help you clean this and to come up with efficient ways for you to clean this. Look, like, don't throw shit on the ground. I was thinking you were going to come up and say, like, you like tried to scoop it back into the bowl and then eat it at first. That was also my like main guess on terms of what you were going to do. But this is probably a more batshit crazy decision on your part across the board. So no, not appropriate. Do I have meltdowns like this sometimes? Sort of. Like I will get angry and frustrated and I will like throw a pillow or something, but like I'm not gonna throw a chili. Kevin's chili from The Office is in the comments here. It's what it sounds like. Throw a broccoli and cheddar soup into the sink. Like,
I don't understand that reference, but I will be sure to ask Randy what it is because she is a huge The Office fan. The other thing I want to add here is Royce would like you. So Royce is our youngest child. This is the room that I record in. He would like you and all of our listeners to know, do not eat the yellow snow. It is important life lesson that it's okay to eat the snow. We got some snow last night here in Southwest Kansas, mostly
first time of the year or what?
Yeah, for us out here. When we were at Chris's for the Chiefs game, it actually snowed on us, but we got more ice than snow. But Royce was very, very emphatically letting me know, Dad, the rules are I can eat the snow, but not the yellow snow. And he wanted me to pass that along to everybody.
Yeah, no, I think that's always good advice. Do not eat the yellow snow. I mean, eating the yellow broccoli and cheddar soup is a good idea.
So you know what's funny? As somebody says, could I have eaten the 20% that wasn't spilt? Potentially. The other thing was I actually did think about doing what you said, which was scooping it into and just like going ahead and eating it.
So like, how dirty are the floors?
No.
Like,
It's spilled in the microwave. It was in the microwave. The microwave. The microwave was clean.
Yeah, I think I probably would have, depending on how clean the microwave was, I think I probably would have scooped it in and eaten it from the microwave.
My immediate reaction was seeing red, and I didn't consider that till after the fact. And then I was like, hey, I may have been able to do that, but
yeah, what can you do? Okay. So the first thing I want to ask you about here as we get into basketball is I did a whole podcast with Nekias Duncan yesterday, breaking down all angles of the Jimmy Butler thing. And we both kind of came to the conclusion that Memphis is the team that makes the most sense, that we like the most, that we think would be the most fun. What are your overarching thoughts on the Jimmy Butler thing? Let's just go there and we'll talk about this for 5 minutes and then we'll move into what we want to talk about. Again, if you want to hear like my overarching thoughts as well as Nekias's, who follows the Miami Heat super close, like please go listen to that show. We'll have a link in the description.
Yeah. It's weird, like the whole scenario of like how we got to this place with Pat Riley and Jimmy and all of that was interesting to me. I've said we went to this last offseason, Sam. We talked about this potentially coming. You brought it up initially. I've said that if I was Miami, I would be ready to move on from Jimmy Butler and start whatever the next iteration of the Miami Heat are. So I'm not surprised that we've landed on this point. I think what is interesting, which you guys ran into yesterday, as I watched you guys record that, was making that trade, finding that trade. Who makes sense for that trade in terms of teams on the timeline? Jimmy is 35. He has this player option. He is a very, very good player. I think you made a really good point with the floor spacing thing in terms of like, yeah, he's not known as a 3-point shooter, but there is still gravity there. I still think when I initially think of it, I still think Golden State. Like to me, Golden State makes a lot of sense. I know that's a little harder to manufacture. I'm trying to wrap my head around Memphis. Maybe with Memphis, I thought was interesting with what you brought up with Memphis is what if it is just a rental? Like what if they don't have to give up so much that it isn't, world ending if they just get him for this run. And depending on what you like you said, and we're about to talk about, Wemby is coming. And so if you have a chance to go ahead and take your shot and go for it. So Golden State continues to be the team that intrigues me the most for Jimmy Butler. I'm still trying to hash out my thoughts on the Memphis idea.
Yeah. So for what it's worth on the Warriors, over at The Athletic today, yesterday, maybe something like that, Anthony Slater, Marcus Thompson did a story on whether or not Jimmy is a possibility. And their impression from talking to people around Butler, at least, is that the Warriors are not seen as a viable option, and there have been no substantive trade talks or traction to get any type of deal done. Butler's history and reputation as a premium two-way player, which the Warriors could use. Some credence exists to the idea that his mid-range repertoire and defensive prowess can elevate the Warriors, but Butler's age and injury history makes him a risky choice. Circumstances could always change prior to the February 6th trade deadline. So here's the thing that changes prior to the February 6th trade deadline for Golden State. It's that they can re-aggregate Dennis Schroeder on the 5th and the 6th of February, which would mean that they don't actually have to then move Kuminga to make the money work. They can just do picks. And look, maybe they don't want to do that. Like that's very possible, but there are like substantive factors that could very easily see this thing change for Golden State, I think, by the deadline, mainly depending on how they play, right? For people who think that like the Warriors would be worse with Jimmy Butler if they were to move like Andrew Wiggins, Brandon Pajemski, and Dennis Schroeder, you are out of your minds, guys. Like Jimmy Butler in the 11 games prior to this little like, 2-game run where he was really bad and took 11 shots in 50 minutes, and we can talk about it, averaged 22, 7, and 5, and led Miami to an 8-3 record. Like Jimmy Butler is still really good. Jimmy Butler was really good last year. He's like kind of the guy. He's basically, if you took Andrew Wiggins and the defensive versatility that he gives Golden State and combined it with like the ball handling and playmaking that you want from Dennis Schroeder, right? And he's a better shot creator and defender than both of those guys, right? So to me, I don't want to say this is a no-brainer, but I think that Golden State, among the teams that are rumored, like let's remove Memphis, because Memphis hasn't really actually been rumored at this point. They're the team that kind of tracks the most for me, even still, because look, you can just play your guys like Moses Moody, like Dennis Schroeder, like Lindy Waters, like whoever you want to, in order to get the shooting that you're losing from Wiggins onto the court. And you can get the length and athleticism and all that stuff. Like Kyle Anderson still exists. Like there are a lot of guys there that you can utilize. They are deep as hell. They don't need more depth. They need like real starting caliber players, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we talked about this going back to the start of the season, that it was an interesting team because of that depth, and we thought that that could be successful in the regular season, but it seemed like at the trade deadline, they would need to make that consolidation trade to really become contenders in the West, specifically for a guy who offensively could take some of that usage off of Steph Curry. And I think you bring up a good point. I think this maybe blinds me a little bit as well. You know, some of the recent games I've watched of the Miami Heat with Butler was like, man, we know he's going to be different wherever he ends up. He's unhappy right now. I feel like he's trying to prove a point with some of his play, whether people like that or not. Like that is kind of the way it is. And I think we're going to see a more realized version of Jimmy Butler. And it's good to point out how good he has been going back to last year. And even for a large stretch of this season with the shooting percentages, what he is defensively. I think Nikai brought up a good point. Like, he's not this all NBA level defender, but he's still, versatile and a step below that. So yeah, I mean, I still like Golden State. Memphis makes sense in the same regard, where we have consistently talked about them making a consolidation trade, and you add Jimmy Butler to the core of Ja, Bane, the season that Jaren Jackson Jr. is having. It takes some pressure off of Jalen Wells to be, I've made this point, like who is their point of attack defender in the playoffs? Like if Jalen Wells is your answer, as good as he's been, that's a little scary when we're talking about a title contender. And so adding somebody like Jimmy Butler solves that and probably puts Jalen in a role that's more suited for him.
I completely agree with you. I really like what Jalen Wells has done this year. I don't mean this disrespectfully to Jalen Wells. Jalen Wells is a skinny rookie, and it's just really hard in the playoffs to kind of deal with the matchups night after night that you're going to be tasked with, achieving basically. So look, I don't want to spend a crazy amount of time on this. Like, just wanted your take on it in general. If you want a full breakdown of this situation, if you're thinking about a team for Jimmy Butler, Nikias and I probably talked about it yesterday. So please go check that out. Go look at that show. That's up on the podcast feed. It's up on the YouTube channel. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel, Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecenie. Let's move on and talk about fun things in basketball, because I wanted to start with the Jokic-Wemby Bowls from this weekend. Friday and Saturday night in the United States, the Spurs and the Nuggets had a back-to-back where they played each other, which means Nikola Jokic and Victor Wembanyama went head-to-head and got to face each other. In the first game of this matchup, Bryce, I'm assuming you watched at least the first game, right? You're muted.
Gosh dang it. I don't want you guys to have to hear me drink the water. I watched the second game.
Okay, so I watched probably I watched the full first game, and then the probably like 2/3 of the second game. And man, I would recommend you go back and watch the first game.
Okay.
The first game is one of the 5 best NBA games I've seen this year. Just point blank. It was back and forth. It was seesaw at the end. And it was just 2 dudes going and fighting and scratching and clawing, trying to get their team to victory. Jokic like taking over as a passer and playmaker. Victor trying to use his length and athleticism to like bother Jokic in any way, shape, or form that he can. Wemby made this like obscene sidestep three where I think he created more like lateral separation. He did it going to his right, not to his left as a right-handed shooter. Like he made a sidestep three going to his right where I don't understand with how much like lateral separation he created. I don't understand how he stayed on balance, let alone had enough balance to make a 3-pointer on top of it. It was the craziest game. Like it starts out with like Wemby getting 2 quick fouls on Jokic in the first 4 minutes. And then like Jokic, like you can like see the supercomputer in his brain working, trying to figure out, okay, like how do I get this dude in the air? Because once I get him in the air, it's fine. Right. Like I'm good. So I just have to like use the footwork to get him in the air and then go. Watching those two, and it's cool from a like historic lens as well, right? Because Wemby is clearly the big man of this generation. Like if you want to call Giannis a big man, that's fine. I just like kind of consider them slightly different archetypes. Like Jokic is the more traditional, quote unquote, like big. Like Giannis always plays next to a center with Brook Lopez, right?
Yeah.
Jokic does not. Jokic is the center, right? Jokic is to me like the clear best big of this generation. All due respect to Anthony Davis, right? And getting to see him in his prime go up against Wemby, who is clearly quickly getting to a prime already at like 21 years old. It's just really fucking cool to watch. Like it's a really cool experience that like I just like kind of sat there as I was watching these two games and I was just like, this is amazing. Like any era of basketball, like you could look at this and you'd be like, this is fucking cool. This is unbelievably, insanely fun to watch basketball.
Well, and it's such different archetypes of players, right? Like you're talking about 2 big men, centers, whatever you want to call it, and they do it in very different ways, very different body types, right? Where Wemby is this long, skinny. Jokic is, the joke is, he never leaves the floor, whatever. Wemby, Jokic shooting the 3 this year. Wemby already doing that early in his career. Jokic is processing and passing. It's funny. You brought up him dribbling, making that shot going to his right. I actually looked up the synergy numbers. He is better. This is Wembanyama. He's better finishing off the dribble going to his left and better shooting off the dribble going to his right, which I would assume it's to me as a right-handed player. I always felt more comfortable with my pull-up jumper going to the left. Now, maybe I'm the oddball, but in general, I feel like righties like getting to the rim with their right and pulling up going to their left. And so his numbers
that's definitely the normal.
Yeah, like
way to think of it.
That's how I've always understood it. And he's actually the opposite, which is fascinating. It's really interesting. He had a 3 from the top of the key in the second game where he kind of like rocks the cross, and then hits him with the hard crossover again, going which direction? To his right, and creates that separation and hits the 3-pointer from the top of the key. It's really fun to watch him. And I think what I really liked in this game is I watched him getting out in transition, trying to get early post position. So I watch Wemby as the season goes on, as his career goes on, finding other nuanced ways in getting attempts that aren't just those threes. Another thing I thought he was really good at, Sam, he's getting really good at the pocket pass as the pick and roll ball handler, which the fact we're saying that 7'5" Victor Wembanyama is operating the pick and roll as the ball handler is crazy enough, but that he's really finding those pocket passes was really impressive to me. And he has some passes that are kind of crazy and then some that are like, hey, don't do that again. But I like that he's still exploring that. But to your overall point, watching these two guys go at it was a lot of fun in that game. While there's also some other interesting pieces on both teams to talk about and break down as well.
I just don't want to, like, we've spent a lot of time talking about Wemby here because like there's this, novelty to what Wemby does, right? Nikola Jokic went for 41 and 46 in back-to-back games here. In the first game, he had 41, 18, and 9. He shot 15 of 36. Like Wemby actually did like a pretty good job making him work and like making him struggle with the length, right? And he still went for 41, 18, and 9. And then in the second game, he takes 35 shots again and goes for 46, 9, and 10 with 2 steals and 2 blocks. This time he goes 19 of 35 from the field. Like, I don't know that I have words anymore for how good Wembanyama is on offense, or how good Jokic is on offense. I think he's actually like, he's at the very least the offensive player that I have enjoyed watching most in my life. I think that's how I would phrase it.
He's close from Steph. Prime Steph was the funnest player I ever watched. Allen Iverson was who I idolized growing up, and he probably still Steph. He would be right there with Steph and AI for me. And I know, like, again, when you talk about different archetypes of players and size, like, this is what makes the NBA great, right? Is like, we're talking about Jokic, Wemby, to Steph Curry, to Allen Iverson. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Just the different versions of players we can see. I put in my notes from that game, how many guys catch the ball with one hand and do something creative and impactful with it as much as Nikola Jokic? He does it every game.
But also never actually let it touch his left hand.
No. This game, he caught, I think it was a pass, offensive rebound, something, catches, immediately finishes. Then later in the game, he does something with it again. I'm just like, I don't watch anybody else do it, Sam.
Yeah, there was a play at the start of the second half in the first game where Wemby is like draped all over his back. And I think it's either Westbrook or Murray's in semi-transition. And there's literally only one place that they can put the ball, and it's like right in Jokic's right hand, and he catches it with these like enormous fucking hands where the ball looks like a tennis ball in his hand, and then he like gathers all with one hand and somehow finishes with Wemby like completely draped on his back. And it's like, well, what do you do with that? Like, you can't do anything with that. That's like perfect defense. I guess you got like out positioned, like Jokic got to the rim, but I'm just sitting there. I'm like, what in the world is this? And then in the fourth quarter, the crazier part was like the way Jokic just took over as a passer, right? Like, he had this insane play where like he drives and like you can literally see his eyes manipulate the corner defender to help down and try and, get there for a help defense because there's a cutter coming through. And he just immediately shoots it out to the corner to get Christian Braun completely wide open for a 3. And Brown drills it, screams like he always does. Shout out Christian Braun. And then like 2 plays later, he catches, and the Nuggets love to run that play where they have one cutter come through and then a second trailer cutter come through. In the way that Jokic is able to make it seem like he's going to the first cutter when just like kind of passing it back to the second cutter. Porter was the second cutter, and he just drills him, finds an easy bucket at the rim. The way that he thinks the game is second to none. Like that, I actually don't think I've ever watched a smarter basketball player. I don't think I've ever watched somebody that is so capable of using his intelligence on the court to both create shots for himself and for others. It is, you have a 7'5" alien with an 8-foot wingspan drenched all over you, and you still are finding these little angles. You're still finding these little ways to create open shots. He is, we don't talk enough somehow about how good Jokic is. I don't think it's constantly about like, is he the MVP? Is his team good enough?
We end up talking about the players around him.
Building.
Like,
yeah. Yes. Speaking specifically just about the ways that Nikola Jokic beats defenders does not happen enough. The guy is unbelievable.
Well, and I think that processing gives him a chance defensively because, again, as we've said, he's not like this athletically gifted outside of his just sheer size. But I watched this game, very, very close. I took a ton of notes, and I still came away impressed with how impactful his hands are. There was one in transition where Wemby did get out in front of him, and it's Chris Paul, who's pretty good passing the basketball, Sam, and Jokic reads his eyes running in transition, takes away the bounce pass first, then notices that Paul's going to throw it over the top, so Jokic gets his hands up, deflects the pass. There's a couple other where he just knows where the offense wants to go with the ball, so he gets his hand in the way and it makes it off target. He had a huge steal on Wemby, kind of in like an 18 to 20 foot range on the wing. Wemby tries to sweep through low. Jokic gets his hand there. He steals it, and then Nuggets kind of put that game away in overtime. I'm not sitting here saying like Jokic is all defense level, but what I'm saying is it doesn't make sense that someone like him is impactful as what he is. And he does it because he understands the game so much that he puts his hands or his foot, if he doesn't want to get his hand there, he puts his foot in the way of where you want to pass the ball because he knows where you want to pass the ball.
No, that's right. That's dead on. The other thing that's really fun, like Rachel brings this up in the comments, Jokic was amazing against Wemby, but he absolutely brutalized Zach Collins. One of the things that's most fun about watching Jokic is when somebody is guarding him that Jokic knows has like a 0% chance to stop him. Like the way that he just completely and utterly destroys dudes that are not strong enough to be able to like physically body him up is the most fun thing in the world to me. Well, like he just demolishes, he dump trucks these dudes.
And you know what he did against the Pistons? And not to go Pistons too early here, since they're actually getting their own segment, rightfully so, is he shot threes. He knew that Jalen Duren struggled to get to pick and pop bigs. So he came out early in that game and pick and popped him to death and made a bunch of threes to start that game. And to me, it's just, it backs up your point of going into a game. He knows the matchup. He knows the flaws of his opponents, and he's ready to capitalize them immediately. And if Victor Wembanyama goes out and whoever San Antonio brings in, he's going to be able to attack in a different way than what he was against Wemby.
And look, Wemby goes for 35, 18, 4, 1, and 2 while shooting 14 of 22 in the first game. The Spurs win that game. Yep. I would say Wemby was like the main reason they won that game. And then in the second game, Wemby goes 20 and 23, 3 assists, 4 blocks. The big difference between the two is the turnovers right now.
Yeah.
Like Wemby turned it over 11 times in these two games. He's tasked with doing a lot, but he's also just not quite as comfortable yet in terms of like the game moving at like a snail's pace, like it does for Jokic, where Jokic is able to like completely process all of this and like make it all work and happen. Right. I just, these two games this weekend, the second game goes into overtime, by the way.
Yep.
The first game was 113 to 110. I just loved it. I loved every single moment of these basketball games. And I can't emphasize enough. I recommend everybody stopping and watching them if they can. They were a true like blast to go down the road of and watch.
Yeah. And like this, it makes you think, how much fun would that be to watch for a series, right? Like this is
yes.
I don't
give it to me this year.
Yes.
Like truly.
Yeah. No, 100%. Because the thing is, another note I took from that game, I think the vets are doing what San Antonio wanted them to do. Like CP3 comes in, orchestrates the offense. Harrison Barnes was really good in the second game. Like, he's knocking down corner threes. Like he can't defend even close to what he used to be able to anymore, but all they need is a vet to stand in the corner, knock down threes, provide spacing. Like that Spurs team is real interesting. I thought Devin, he was inefficient in this second game, but I was very intrigued by what he was able to do. And so like, give me this. I don't cheer for anybody. Like contrary to popular belief, I don't even cheer for the Pistons. I'm not a fan. I just cover the team, but I want to see the Spurs in the playoffs because I want to see the calculations of an opponent going against Wembanyama for an entire series. Who guards him? Who doesn't? How do they change that throughout the series?
Yeah.
How does he do things? How do you attack him? Are there flaws or something like that? Like I want to see those things in a playoff.
I completely agree. I would love to see him in the playoffs this year. I would just even love to see him in the play-in. Like make a team in a one game, like winner take all situation,
Yeah.
figure him out. Like,
Yeah.
please, like that'd be really fun to me. Make that team figure out what in the world to do with him and like how to slow him down. That'd be amazing. I don't know if I have anything else really on these games. I mean, Denver is now back up to 4th in the West. They're tied with the Lakers in that regard. They are a half game ahead of 7th, where the Clippers are 20-15. We are starting to get like a small amount of separation between like 4th and 10th, for instance, where there are 3 games now between the Nuggets and Lakers at 4th and the Timberwolves at 10th, right? And there are 4.5 games between the Nuggets and Lakers in 4th and the Kings at 11th currently in the conference. So like there is slowly but surely some separation coming here. Dallas is, kind of struggling a little bit right now without Luka. They've dropped down to 6th. This is a really crazy Western Conference. We knew it was going to be coming into the year, and it is continuing to just absolutely pay off in that respect. Like it is a crazy, crazy season in the NBA, and the Western Conference is as tightly packed as I can remember. And, that's probably the easiest way to transition into the Phoenix Suns. And
Can I ask? Right? I want to ask one quick question on the Nuggets, because I don't know when we'll come back to them and talk about them as a team over the next few weeks. What are your thoughts so far on Russell Westbrook? Like just the addition, what he's added. My quick thoughts is I think he looks really good when he's on the floor with Jokic. A lot of people look good, but I think there's real chemistry between the two of them, like playing ball screens either way and stuff like that. It's just like, okay, well, is that the best use of Russ? Is that really how you like, who then doesn't stay on the floor if Russ needs to be on the floor to be successful? So I think he's been very impactful in a lot of ways. It just wasn't the way I thought, which maybe was kind of driving the second unit. He almost looked like he's going to absolutely be at his best playing with Jokic, and they need a couple guys to be their best when Jokic isn't on the floor. Like that to me is what they're missing a little bit of.
Well, I feel like, honestly, this probably isn't going much differently than what we expected, if only because, what did we say? That he makes more sense as like the 4 almost next to Jokic, right? Well, what's the big thing that's happening over these last like 5 or 6 games?
He's playing the Aaron Gordon role
earlier in the season. Exactly. He's playing the Aaron Gordon role. And he's not as good defensively as Aaron Gordon, which means the Nuggets absolutely are going to want Aaron Gordon back, and he will start. But it's going to be interesting to see how they manage it when Gordon comes back, because I agree with you. I do think Russ and Jokic have like real chemistry, but I think that Gordon is a more valuable player than Russ for them, and trying to figure out like how to make that work will be tricky. I mean, here's like the best possible encapsulation that I can give you of the difference when Russ is on the court with Jokic versus when he's not on the court with Jokic. So when Russ is out there with Jokic, the Nuggets are a plus 11.5. They score 126 points per 100 possession and only give up 114. When Russ is on the court without Nikola Jokic, they get beaten by 20.5 points per 100 possessions. They score 100 points per 100 and give up 121. Like, it is literally all about if Jokic is on the court with Russ in terms of Russ being successful. I've never seen a starker difference in like on-off numbers than that right there. So can you find the minutes for Russ to play with Aaron Gordon or to play without Aaron Gordon? Can you figure out a way to play them together? Russ, Aaron Gordon, and Jokic. Like that's what it is ultimately going to come down to for me with Russ. No.
It really clicked watching that game, how much they're playing off of each other and how much better Russ. And listen, I watched it in person a couple weeks ago. Like the energy that Russ infuses into that team is real.
And I
don't think people always want to value that, but like it was real. Like I talked to some people after the game that were very close to the team, and it was real in that game. And so that there's value in that, especially in a regular season where you just pointed out standings. You would like to start to create some separation to stay in the top 4 or at least the top 6. It just was like, how do they navigate all of this when Gordon's back in rotation? Can they find a way to stagger one of those guys and let that person be the second unit guy that really drives the non-Jokic minutes? Because now you can trust Russ to be in that role with Jokic in the, I don't want to say he has to start, but in those minutes. So I think there's an answer here somewhere. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah. Before we get to the Phoenix Suns, PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. We love PrizePicks here at Game Theory because of how easy they make it to get real money sports action. If you think that your favorite player is going to get more or less yardage than what their listed over under is, you can make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use the code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use that code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Okay, Bryce, it's time to talk about the Phoenix Suns. Oh boy.
Where are we starting? Where are we starting?
Let's start here. They've lost 7 of 8, including an 18-point loss last night to the Indiana Pacers, where they were full strength outside of Nurkic, right? Nurkic served the last game of his 3-game suspension for the Najee Marshall fight. They also have that weird game where Nurkic got suspended, where they scored 89 against the Luka-less Dallas Mavericks. No Devin Booker in that game. They have like the crazy 27-point like beatdown they had against Denver. They did come back and beat them on Christmas. It's worth noting there. They also like the thing that like worried me most, like having like really looked back and like thought about this a little bit more. Prior to this, like having lost 7 and 8 games, they played 2 like disconcertingly tight games against Portland and Utah.
Yeah.
That feels worrisome. And then like right before that, they'd lost 3 in a row on the road to Miami, Orlando, and New Orleans.
So here's real quick. They had 6, 7, like they had a 10-game stretch where they only played 2 games. And those 2 games were the win over Utah, the win over Portland. And then they had, 4 days off before that, 1 day in between, 3 days off after. And then they go on a 3-game losing streak after that time off. Like it's just, and then it's a whole bunch of I'm looking at B-ball reference. So green is a win, red is a loss. And then it's all of that red of the 7 of 8 game losing streak.
Yeah, I mean, here's the other thing too. Like I will say
Stretch.
that 4 game off run, like everybody had 4 games off.
For
Milwaukee and Oklahoma City, but like
I'm just saying, like it's not like it was like, oh my gosh, this is 5 games in 7 days or something like that. Like
totally,
everybody got it. I understand that. I'm just saying that stretch did happen, and then they've gone on this 7 of 8 losses after that, where they only had 2 games in 10 days, and 2 of them. And those 2 games were against 2 of the worst teams in the association.
Yeah. So where are you at with this team? Like, what are we thinking is the issue here with them?
I don't think they use their stars to create the offense they could. I've always thought this. It's always been frustrating to watch them offensively have all of this talent, and the ball just doesn't move. I think you should use your elite offensive talent to generate easier looks where KD breaks down the defense, kicks to Booker, he attacks a closeout, kicks to Bill attacks the closeouts. Then it's like, I watched one the other day. I think Kyrie did it. Attacked, kicked, swing, back to Kyrie. Kyrie hit a corner 3. And I'm just using Kyrie as an example. It's the one I remember. I don't feel like Phoenix ever does that. It's just always isolation, which I know these are some of the best isolation scorers in the game, especially 2 of them still. But why not use that talent to generate easier looks? So that's my issue offensively, 10th rated offense in the league. And then they're 25th in defense. And we've talked about Nurkic here. Like, I love Tyus Jones, but he's not the answer on the defensive end. Like, who are the positive defensive players on this team, Sam? KD and rookie Ryan Dunn? Like, is there...
Yeah, probably.
Royce O'Neal is okay.
Yeah, Royce is okay. That's right. Okogie is fine, but
Okogie plays extremely hard, but I don't know
doesn't
this like
play that much.
Yeah, I like Okogie just as like a energy rotation guy. They don't seem to like him that way, but yeah, as Guru says, like, it's their defense. It is. It's just like their offense with this talent could still be better than 10th in the NBA, and I do think that should be that's an issue as well.
So, in 221 minutes that they've played together this season, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker have a -6 net rating. They give up 120 points per 100 possessions, and they only score 114. When Kevin Durant and Devin Booker are out there, without Bradley Beal, they beat teams by 7 points per 100, score 120, only give up 113. When Devin Booker's out there alone without Bradley Beal or Kevin Durant, they still beat teams by 0.6 points per 100. When Kevin Durant is out there without Bradley Beal and Devin Booker, they beat teams by 6 points per 100 possessions. And when Bradley Beal is out there without Durant and without Booker, they beat teams by 16 points per 100 possessions. And that's in like 130 minutes. All of this just says to me, like, very obviously that this trio does not work together.
Yeah.
Like that, it's as simple as that to me. Like, I don't know that we need to overthink it beyond what it is, right? It's not like one person's fault. Like, Beal will get most of the criticism, probably because he's the third player of the three. Like, he's the worst of the three, because Kevin Durant and Devin Booker are top 20 players in the league, right? But I don't, when I watch Bradley Beal, I don't think Bradley Beal's been terrible this year. Like, in doing his own thing, it's just that the blend of everybody doesn't work together.
Yeah.
And part of that is like the guys around them, like playing Tyus Jones with Bradley Beal and Devin Booker makes it really hard to defend. Yusuf Nurkic has been terrible. Like, we can just say it. He's been not very good this year. So I feel like it is very obvious that at the end of the day, they probably just have to break this 3 up. The way that you would like to do that is by moving Bradley Beal. The problem is Bradley Beal has a no trade clause and also has a $50 million contract that also sees him get paid $57 million in 2026-27. Like, that's the reason Miami is not going to do the Jimmy Butler for Bradley Beal thing. That's just not happening, guys. It's not. Like, I wrote that today. I did a big write-up on like the Jimmy Butler thing. I'm telling you, like, it's just not happening. They might be able to find like a third team, but like, I cannot see a world where Miami is like, yeah, we'll do Bradley Beal here.
Who's the team that takes it though? Like,
that's it. No, that's really it. I don't know who takes that contract. In fact, I will say, like, I don't think anybody is going to take that deal.
It just, because of the years on it, right? I mean, it has, I mean, for the numbers for everybody, it's 50 this year, it's 53.6 next year, and then it's a player option for 26-27 at 57 that year. It's just, it'd be one thing if it was down to the last 2 years of it even. It's just like, okay, well, half a season or whatever, and then you one more year, and then we're off of it. It's not that. And so it is really, really hard to find a team that would have a reason to take on that contract for what you're getting. You know, it's not like Bradley Beal is just flat out, awful, but it's not he's not close to that level of player.
Yeah. So, like, if Bradley Beal was to hit the open market right now, what do you think he would get? I think it'd be like 25 to 30.
What was Clay's this summer?
He got like 20, I believe. Maybe like 18.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 20 maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe it's maybe it's a little bit less than what I'm thinking. But even if I'm like being kind and saying it's 25 to 30, right? And he, again, like I think Beal has played well this year.
Sure.
Beal is averaging 19 points a game, shooting like 49, 39, 82 or whatever.
Yep.
He's playing hard on defense. Like he's actually trying on defense this year. Like that's the thing that like I want people to like understand. I'm not saying he's like a really good defender because he's not that, but he's giving real effort and he's not tanking their like I don't think he out there is tanking their defense. On some level, like the combination of him with like Tyus Jones and like the combination of him with like Nurkic and things like that, that can be tanking their defense. But like he's not doing that by not, achieving his responsibilities, right? There are physical limitations, but he is working hard and trying to do that and trying to like make it work, right? Like Maurice Shaw says in the comments, Tobias Harris level contract. Bradley Beal's a better player than Tobias Harris.
Yeah,
he just is, right?
But to Maurice's point here, I think that's I guess that could be the idea of Bradley Beal on the open market is a team like Detroit in that scenario says, hey, we'll bring this guy in to be this veteran, whatever, but not at $50 million a year. Like honestly, Detroit would be interesting for him, but again, not at that number for the next 3 years. So I think that's an interesting comment there, Maurice, in terms of what you're saying with Tobias. But he's not a free agent. Like that's not the situation we're in.
Correct. He has 3 years left at like 160 million. When I'm saying that he should be getting probably like 3 years, 85 or something like that. So literally his deal is over leveraged by like $80 million and by like $25 to $30 million per year right now. There's nobody in the league that's taking that money. I don't think so, at least. Like I would be very surprised if anybody in the league took that deal.
Yeah.
And that's why this sucks for Phoenix and why they can't do anything on top of being in the second apron and having flouted that. They have Nurkic, right? They could try and move him. That's why, to me, like the obvious guy that makes sense for them to move, and I don't know if they're going to do it, but like there are definitely teams out there that would do Grayson Allen for like a real center, I would imagine. Grayson like didn't start the year super, super well.
It's getting there, though.
But like, yeah, he's gotten back to where he was last season, where I thought that like he took a deal that was kind of an underpay for what he is capable of bringing. Like if you look, he started the season shooting super terribly from three because he was kind of in and out of the lineup. But in his last 16 games, he's shooting 41% from three on 6 attempts per game again, averaging 12 points, 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists per game. Like Grayson is back to being like basically like what his value is like on his contract. I think that that's basically what you have to do. You have to find a taker for Grayson. And to me, like, if I was Phoenix, I would try to get somebody. I'd try and get one of Orlando's bigs. The problem is that Orlando has the Mo Wagner injury now.
Yeah.
Which might make them a little bit less inclined to move the bigs. But there has to be a team out there that would do a center for Grayson Allen.
Yeah, no, like Orlando was always the team, but I think the last time I watched him play, they were starting both of those guys. I think Wendell and Goga started, and then they brought in Isaac off the bench in that particular game. So they're not there. I don't know what Brooklyn's doing with both of their bigs. Yeah, Grayson would make sense, and he is shooting the ball better. As somebody brought up, that's a pretty extended contract too. Now he's only 29. It's a much lower number, but you're committing to some real money with Grayson Allen if you trade for him as well, because he got 4 years on that, including the player option. Probably a fine contract as long as he continues to shoot the ball the way he has. But
if you're Brooklyn and you have like an amount of space, and if you're planning on moving Cam Johnson because you can get Cam Johnson for, you know, you can get like real value for Cam because Cam's really good. Is there a deal like around Day'Ron Sharpe and Grayson Allen that makes sense?
So, I mean, that's where I was going to go. I was just trying to think. I hesitated because I wasn't sure what Brooklyn's play was there in terms of. So I guess the idea is we're going to move Cam Johnson. So let's bring in Grayson to at least provide floor spacing for this young core that we're going to have, which is always important. I could see that. I could see that. And eventually flip him if you wanted to. Maybe.
Something like that.
Listen, like I'm a big Day'Ron Sharpe fan. I think he's really good. Would love to see him get an opportunity like that in terms of minutes. So I like that idea. Yeah, I think it makes more sense if they know they're moving on from Cam, because I think Brooklyn, you don't want to sell all of your floor spacing.
I mean, is there just like a Grayson Allen for Mitchell Robinson deal?
And just you're counting on Precious?
Yeah, I mean, look, like they've actually been like they've survived the Precious and Jericho Sims minutes. Like, I think that might actually be okay, and that's the kind of deal that would give them a little bit more perimeter depth and would give, Phoenix like a real center.
Yeah. Maybe.
I kind of think that deal makes both of those teams better.
Dirty Dancer says phone it in.
It's not bad.
I just want somebody bigger for the Knicks, not like actually like an actual bigger player, like a bigger wing than Grayson. Knicks don't need depth. Tibbs wouldn't use it. Yeah. Okay. That's a good point, Rachel. Yeah. What do you think the value of Grayson Allen is what we're considering it right now with the floor spacing?
The value of Grayson Allen is what we're considering.
Like what we're
right now.
Like, do you think that NBA teams would value him the way we're saying? Like 4-year contracts? Is it going to return somebody like Day'Ron Sharpe or Mitchell Robinson or somebody like that? Like it's. I think yes. I feel like we're getting some pushback in the comments. That's why I'm curious. I mean,
I think Grayson's good. So like, that's whatever. Grayson Allen's awesome last year, dude. Like he was super good, and like he's getting back to that level already right now. So yeah, I think that Grayson Allen would make a ton of sense for the Knicks.
Yeah, that is, just looking through the contract situation, because like I say, Bill, it's really hard to figure out. Nurkic, you're not doing something with. I mean, that's really the only.
But by the way, the big thing here is like Mitchell Robinson has to be healthy.
Yeah.
Like if Mitchell Robinson isn't healthy, this doesn't make any sense for Phoenix.
Yeah.
But like something like that, and here's the reason that it kind of has to be Grayson, is because they kind of need Royce O'Neal's defense a little bit more. They seem to like playing Tyus Jones because he like moves the ball and kind of gets their shit moving around the perimeter. I feel like that's the kind of deal that works.
Yeah.
Something like that. But I don't know. Like, again, like it only works if Mitch is returning to me. And it gives the Knicks a little bit more perimeter depth, gives them another wing that they can actually play. They have enough big wings. Like they have Josh Hart, and Josh Hart plays bigger than what he is at 6'5", but like Anunoby and Bridges to be able to kind of make it work around Grayson. I kind of think that tracks a little bit. I think Grayson's basically worth what his contract is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll have to workshop this a little bit more because like I said, it seems like that's the biggest pushback right now. So it'll be interesting to get some feedback on that. I mean, I feel like that contract's going to barely be the MLE. And so it
Correct.
doesn't, I don't think Grayson Allen is on a good contract, but I guess.
No, it's not like a plus value contract. It's literally just what he's worth, I think.
Yeah. I don't look at that number and think overpay right now, I guess, but I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah. The reason that we kind of talk about this and do this like side run onto Grayson is that I don't think anybody's going to want to take Nurkic. He's been dreadful this year, unfortunately, and has another year left on his deal. No one's going to want Beal, and presumably they don't want to trade Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Maybe that's where this does go in the offseason, is they do have to break this thing up. But if you want to try and make this work this year, it feels to me like Grayson is probably the guy that you try to make work.
Yeah.
In a deal.
It's the only one that has, I mean, Royce O'Neal, I get, but 31. His contract is better, I guess, is, just looking through the contracts they have. So he would be
the other thing is with Royce, they can't take back more in a deal than what they send out.
So the number actually may end up being a hindrance.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah. I think there are definitely teams around the league that would think Grayson Allen is if not a plus value, like definitely neutral on that contract and would be happy to pay that for him. Like I feel pretty confident of that, to be honest with you. Okay. The next thing here is that we haven't really talked a ton about the defense. They are 26th in defense. Do you think it is just like a personnel issue for Phoenix?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, who are the plus defenders? And that's kind of what I led with. I think going into the year, and somebody said it in the comments, I thought it was a good point. I said this Suns team, to be successful, needed Devin Booker to be the Olympics version of Devin Booker that we saw, where he was willing to take those defensive matchups. And to clarify, the person in the comments said we saw him do it in the Olympics. We haven't seen them do that for the majority of his NBA career. And that's a good point, because that hasn't been what we've seen. I hoped, again, this is where you put all this offensive talent together. I guess my thought would be that you would have a little more energy to expend on the defensive end. And it just hasn't happened in that way. So there's just not a whole lot of plus level defenders. You don't have a big man to anchor the defense in any capacity. I think it's just hard to put a quality defense on the floor when you don't have that personnel. Like, I'm sure there's some scheme things that people could bring up, but at the end of the day, you got to have guys that stay in front of the ball or protect the rim or whatever. I don't think they're overly disruptive on the defensive end. And so because of that, they just aren't very good.
Yeah. No, I think the disruption factor is the best word you used there. They are not in any way, shape, or form disruptive.
Yep.
That's the biggest thing to me. Nothing that they do, it feels like disrupts the opponent when I watch them. And I think that is like a personnel thing. I also think it's like, I think Kevin Durant's length sometimes is disruptive, actually. I think that can be a real factor. But I feel like their guards, their point of attack guys, nothing is disruptive. And then Nurkic, like, it's just constantly sitting back because he can't guard anybody in space. And that just like allows guys to kind of walk into what they want to do a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So that lack of disruption is the entire thing to me.
Yep.
And like part of me is willing to throw away, like, Ron Burgundy says in the comments, the Suns basically spent the entire game last night with Kevin Durant as the only rim protector on the floor. 100% right. Like, I'm almost willing to throw away that Pacers game. The Pacers are super hard to play at home when the Pacers are in Indiana. I mean, they are really, really difficult to deal with from a pace perspective, especially like if you're an older team that is in the middle of not having your center and having to deal with like a few different things. Like, they will just come at you in waves, right? They're really, really hard to manage. It's the other games. Like, honestly, the 2 wins against Utah and Portland are the games that worry me most. Like, those were close games. So I was fairly concerned about that watching those. And like the New Orleans loss. That's where like the alarm bells like started for this thing to me. And
Yeah.
like them losing these games, like that's not wildly worrisome. The other thing here is like defensively, 27th in defensive rebounding rate over the last 10 games. If you look over the course of the season, they are 17th in defensive
17th.
rebounding rate.
Yeah.
But like over this run, they've just gotten destroyed on the glass. Just gotten absolutely destroyed on the glass.
Yeah, and again, like just not a whole lot. Like Nurkic rebounds the ball well. Durant, of course, rebounds the ball well for a forward, but then it goes downhill real fast after that. You know, Royce O'Neal gets on the glass, and then there's not a whole lot else. So again, like there isn't a personnel to say, oh well, you know, this guy really should be doing it or whatever. And that's why I point back to the offense a little bit. Not that this would be, you know, we may not be screaming title contenders, but if this was a top 5, top 3 offense with this trio, this would look a whole lot better. And 10th isn't bad, but is 10th good enough when that kind of needs to be your identity, I feel like, based on how you put this roster together.
Well, and I'll say this too about their offense. Like they take a lot of jumpers, right?
Yeah,
Like if you look at, for instance, the last 10 games, right? They take more non-restricted area paint shots than anybody other than Memphis. And they are top 5 in mid-range attempts as well, which when you have the 3 guys that you have, not surprising, right? It's just kind of who their games are. They're actually making 54% of their mid-range attempts over this 10-game run. Like this could be worse. Like if they were shooting marginally worse from the mid-range, like they are outlier good from the mid-range right now. Kevin Durant should be right around like 50 to 55%. The other guys like really shouldn't be that good. They're only a league average in terms of non-paint area or non-restricted area paint points, despite the fact they take a lot of those shots. And they take fewer above the break threes than anyone in the league outside of New York and Toronto, right? Over these last 10 games. The shot mix is hard. The shot mix is really, really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
so
high level of difficulty for really elite offensive players, especially the 2. It's just, again, it's frustrating that they can't create more high efficiency shots when you have that much talent on the floor.
Well, and like it's almost like you're just automatically losing the math game.
Sure.
Every night. You're taking no threes. They generate corner threes, I should say. Like this offense does a decent job of generating corner threes, but you take no above the break threes. You take a ton of mid-range shots. You don't protect the rim. You don't rebound. You're automatically losing the possession battle and the shot quality value every night, which means you're putting yourself at a significant disadvantage talent-wise every single time. And like, to me, I can't blame Mike Budenholzer for that. Like, we've seen multiple coaches come through this thing and not be able to fix this. Mike Budenholzer's whole fucking thing is that he's great at generating an offense that creates open threes when you have guys who create downhill pressure. Like that's the whole thing. He's had to adjust to try and make it work for the talent that he has on the roster. So it's bad. It's hard and it's bad. And I don't know what to do totally.
Yeah. I mean,
Phoenix, I think we're heading toward them having to break this thing up in the summer based off of how they're playing right now. You know, for Suns fans, I hope that doesn't happen, because if it does, I mean, you're either heading toward having to trade probably Devin Booker to Houston, or in order to get your picks back and like rebuild this thing, or you're heading toward like a long time of being at best in the middle, at worst, like out of the playoff picture.
Yeah. And just to like offensive rebound percentage, 25th, we mentioned not being disruptive defensively. Like it's interesting with the possessions and the math game and all of that, but I agree with you. I don't think there's a move to be made at the deadline in general. So I think they have to play this through. Hopefully they figure something out, something can click. You mentioned the standings earlier, you know, all of a sudden they're 4 games out of 6, you know, separation is starting to happen, probably going to continue to happen a little bit, but I would play it out. I think, unless I could, something around Grayson Allen did happen to materialize. and then you reevaluate in the summer and figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's right. Okay. Bryce, let's get to a more fun topic.
Okay.
I'm just going to give you the floor. Talk about the Detroit Pistons, baby, for just to kind of set the table here.
Yeah.
The Detroit Pistons are now 17-18. They have won 6 of their last 7. Those wins include a win over Minnesota yesterday, where Anthony Edwards went totally bananas and nobody else could do anything. A win against a depleted Orlando Magic team, a win against the Charlotte Hornets.
Depleted.
Was,
no LaMelo Ball or Brandon Miller. Just in
a truly hideous basketball game that I watched, unfortunately. But the bigger wins to me are they had the 3-game road trip where they beat the Suns, Lakers, and Kings back to back to back before losing in Denver.
Yep.
And that loss to Denver was, no, well, I was going to say, I thought it was like, it was second and third night, but like not a back to back or anything.
Yeah.
Are the Pistons good, Bryce Simon?
So yeah, that Nuggets game was the 4th of a 4-game road trip that they make. And you could tell like things just weren't there for them for that one. Some interesting wins in this stretch. Obviously the Sacramento one where J.I. hit the 3, the and 1 3 that De'Aaron Fox fouled him on. The Charlotte win was ugly, but they found a way.
Mike Brown gets fired game.
The Mike Brown gets fired game. Yeah, it's not good whenever the Pistons beat you and then you get fired. That's tough. No, they're not good. Are they way better and much improved from last year? Absolutely. Are they competitive and competent? Absolutely. Are they fun to watch? Absolutely. There's been some very exciting games this year where Malik Beasley has gone nuclear, where Tim Hardaway Jr. went nuclear in an overtime game against Miami. It looked like they were going to lose. Asar is back doing athletic things. And Cade Cunningham, as we talked about on our last episode, is probably an all-star. He's at least playing at that level right now and, making threes. So yeah, it's a fun team to watch and they're competitive on a nightly basis. They're not just beating teams because they're resting their stars. I know Charlotte did that with LaMelo and Brandon Miller, but like they've beaten teams that are good teams with their full, like Minnesota had all their dudes last night, right? They started their normal starting lineup. Came in, Naz Reid came in, all of that. And other than Ant going nuclear, Detroit completely dominated that game last night, Sam. And the improvement in that game was lots of times this year, they'll get 12, 15-point leads, and then they'll let the other team came back. They answered it every time. And Ant was on one, and they answered it every single time, and they never really let Minnesota get close. So I think the biggest thing for Detroit is they're getting real data to evaluate. Like they're getting real basketball games this season to evaluate how good Cade is, how good Asar, Ron Holland, unfortunately no longer Jaden Ivey, at least for a little while. And there's nothing more valuable for a team in Detroit's position than real actual data to evaluate.
Yeah, the wild thing about that game last night was literally like after the game that the Timberwolves had played before the Pistons game, Anthony Edwards was complaining about like, I get doubled every time I touch the ball or anytime I drive. That's why my shot distribution is like totally different this year. He was saying that like, it's really frustrating that he constantly always has 2 on the ball against him. And what happens in that game? Like literally nobody else shows up for Minnesota. Yeah. Cade Cunningham over his last 16 games, 25 points, 10 assists, 6 rebounds, shooting 46, 39, 77. Cade has ascended. Is like the big number one thing here to me. Cade is not just an all-star. I think we're like borderline. If he continues this, there's like a real All-NBA case for Cade this year. If he continues this like run that he's had over his last 16. Also limited the turnovers down below 4 per game during that run is a big factor. He's still at like 3.8 during that run. We're not throwing a party here, but for where he has been throughout his career, it's a big factor. Cade being able to like just completely orchestrate and see the court, see all of the avenues, and continue to improve as a ball handler in tight spaces. Like that is a big thing here. Cade is no longer just like at times losing the ball when he gets into those tight spaces. And part of that is absolutely the spacing, right? Them having real shooters out there, be it Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, Simone Fontecchio, like whoever you want to have out there that ends up getting proved to be like the shooter that you have out there, they get guarded at the end of the day. Tobias Harris gets guarded, right?
Tim Hardaway Jr. gets guard. Like Tim Hardaway Jr. has gravity. As much as he frustrates Pistons fans right now, he has gravity.
Yeah, like Tim Hardaway Jr. can be in the midst of like a catastrophic shooting stretch like he is. Teams still guard him. They still guard him at the end of the day. So I think that they've kind of finally figured out, hey, let's go get two-way players to play with Cade.
It's proof
which is
of
what
concept.
we've been saying on the show for 3 fucking years. Hey, go put this guy who's an incredible creator with the ball in his hands and in ball screens around shooting, and let's let it rock.
The thing is, even if he was the number 1 pick, it made no, like you need to invest everything into him being successful. The only path to this thing getting to a positive place was Cade Cunningham being this guy. And the only path to finding that out was putting floor spacing around him. And they refused to do it for multiple years. And again, I don't know if Malik Beasley gets re-signed this offseason or gets moved at the deadline. The Tobias Harris contract was too much. We said it at the time. He's probably going to be here for another year, and then who knows what happens. Tim Hardaway Jr. probably moves on to a new team. But all of these guys have done one thing, and that is proof of concept. Like that's what I think of right now is Malik Beasley is proof of concept. You put a real floor spacer around Cade Cunningham, and truthfully, even Jaden Ivey, and things look pretty good. They look like real basketball players that can play at a high level. Cade is scoring the ball. I think his biggest offensive improvement along with the playmaking is the 3-point shots. That has been a huge part of his game this year, and it's much improved. And he had to do something. Either it was the 3 or is the finishing at the rim, because the finishing at the rim still is not very good. Like he's still for me, for Cade to truly be all NBA, either the 3-point jumper has to take yet another leap, or he's got to figure out the finishing / get to the free throw line. One of those things. But the playmaking is unbelievable right now. And he's always going to be a high turnover guy. There's some nonchalantness at times with things, but he has real creation. The lob chemistry with Jalen Duren is real. And I think the defense has slipped back just a little bit, but it's still much better than what it's been. And I think at the very least, he's a neutral defender, which I'll take considering what he does on the offensive end.
Yeah, like I thought earlier this year, like he was slipping into, like there are moments where he's like actually pretty good.
Agreed. There was a couple week stretch where it's like, this is a real 2-way dude, and it's not quite that anymore.
Yeah, and like Harry Morose brings up, it's why people were so hype about him with the select team. It's 100% right. Like when he goes to the US team, he's a dude there because he's surrounded by players that can like accentuate his gifts. It's a huge factor. So whereas with the Pistons, he's been stuck with dudes that can't shoot, don't really defend, and just generally don't fit with what his skill set is. So where I kind of want to go next is like, you didn't really like answer the question. Like, what was the question? Are the Pistons just flat out good now?
No, I said I don't think they're good. I think they're fun, competitive, competent. Yeah. I don't think they're good yet. I think that's what I believe about them. I don't think they're good yet.
I agree with you for what it's worth. I think they are fun, competitive, competent.
Yeah.
And they're 17 and 18 right now. And by the way, like you look at their schedule coming up, there's a chance Portland, Brooklyn, Golden State, Toronto.
Yeah.
And then like at the Knicks, which is probably not great, but they're home against the Pacers, who do not play well on the road, home against the Suns, who are a calamity at this point, like we just talked about. And then they have like a big road run here that's probably going to be quite difficult against Houston, Atlanta, Orlando, Cleveland, and Indiana, before like another big home stretch where it's Dallas, Chicago, Atlanta, Cleveland, Philadelphia, Charlotte, and then back-to-back road games against Chicago. If you told me that they're right around 500 at the deadline, I think I would buy that. And it's like part of it's like schedule based, but like I think I actually would buy that they would be right around 500 at the deadline.
Here's what's going to be interesting. The JI injury is impactful. No matter what people thought about JI was the second leading scorer on this team. He was taking the second most shots on this team. He was the best 3-point shooter on this team in terms of percentage. Obviously, Beasley has more volume. He got to the free throw line second on this team. He was second on assists. Like, he was second on this team in just about everything offensively. And I think a lot of their success this year was because Malik Beasley was in the perfect role, right? Not too much, not too little, exactly what he was capable of handling. I think the guy that's going to ultimately determine whether they continue to win games is honestly Tobias Harris. They need Tobias Harris to go out and be like at least a regular season average team number 2 type option, which he's been in his career in the regular season, but not 13 points a game, shooting 35% from 3. Tobias Harris is what they've got this year, which was fine when JI was there because you didn't want him taking a bunch of shots. You wanted JI to have to play that number 2 role. I think it comes down to Tobias Harris on whether or not they continue to win games at this rate. And if they don't, it's okay. They'll still have that spacing and Cade will still be awesome. But I think that determines how successful they are in terms of wins and losses.
I think that's probably right now. I do wonder if they go out and make a move.
So that is really interesting as well, because after the JI injury, the calculations could change, right? Before it was, so anybody who doesn't know, they made the Paul Reed move. The Pistons have more cap space than any other team in the league, including the teams that have their full non-taxpayer MLE as trade exceptions. So they can be the best third team in a trade situation. They strategically made that happen. That was always seemed like the plan, to get future assets because they're at a pick deficit right now. The question now is, do they change? Do they adjust? And do they become buyers in some capacity to really make a push for this play-in tournament? And I don't think I would. I would stay the course. I would ask Tobias to step up and figure some more things out and can continue to get data. But I can't blame them after all of the losing we've seen for the last 4 or 5 years. I understand if it's a move for, I don't know who the name is. I saw a Colin Sexton reference earlier in the chat. That would be really cool. I don't know that they want to give up those kind of the assets that it would take though. Like, they cannot give up draft capital, Sam. I don't think. I think if
I don't think so. Like, so here's what I did in the Jimmy Butler thing I did earlier today.
Okay.
Let's say that Memphis goes for this, right?
Okay. Yeah.
If they do, I don't know that Miami's going to want Marcus Smart.
Okay.
Could you ship Marcus Smart for the Tim Hardaway Jr. contract?
Sure. Like, I don't know that I land in the same spot with Marcus Smart. Like, I understand what he would bring to the team.
My theory on it was leadership defensively.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, the most important thing now for the Pistons is figuring out if Jalen Duren is a guy that you extend or not.
Yeah.
And like, having a real guard who can get around screens and like hopefully teach Jalen like where he needs to be all the time for like a year and a half. That actually feels like a more valuable thing to acquire even than like another shooter to me. Just like knowing, basically getting the information that you need on Jalen Duren to go, okay, are we extending him or are we just removing him from the equation at this point?
So Smart's interesting because then it's like, let's just go full into this defense, right? So no, there is real spacing concerns, Mel. Like,
100% have real spacing concerns with it.
Here's the thing though. Here would be my pitch. We saw the proof of concept, right? We saw it. We know Cade can be that dude with spacing. So you know what? We're not going to be able to be that team this year. Not right now. So let's buy into the other side. What's the next most important thing the Pistons can figure out the rest of this season, Sam? You just said it. What is Jalen Duren?
I think it's figuring out what Jalen Duren is.
You can't get the JI answer now. So let's get an answer on JD. it would be real interesting to throw out a Cade with Smart, with Beasley, with one of Asar, Ron Holland, and Duren. And like you said, it would be very interesting to then give Duren a real screen navigator, because this team stinks at navigating screens on and off the ball. They're not good at it at all.
Correct.
To give him a real screen navigator to see if Duren is the problem in drop coverage, or if it's like, hey, what is Duren supposed to do when his guys never navigate a ball screen? I would buy into that. I don't love the floor spacing. We're right back to where we were. And the contract, Sam.
Here'd be my comment on the floor spacing. Did teams like early in the season really treat Jaden Ivey like a shooter?
They did not. And it's not until he started making shots.
Right. And like later in the season, like they kind of figured it out that they had to treat him like that. But I don't know. Like, I feel like they've kind of dealt with what this spacing is. It's just having like real shooters like Malik Beasley and, Fontecchio and Tim Hardaway, who would be moving in this situation. But like, they need another ball handler as well. And like Marcus can go handle the ball too. Like that's the other factor here.
That's maybe it all depends on how you want to play this, right? Because like, some people would not like this because they think it takes away from the growth and opportunities for an Asar Thompson. And so like, what is your palette for Asar Thompson essentially playing the exact role you're talking about with Marcus Smart of, hey, go be this defender. Let's see what you can do. And for some people, and I'll be honest with you, Sam, I'm in this category of, I want to see if Asar can do it on the ball or not. Like, I want to see if he can do some primary initiation. I'm not sold he can. I have the appetite to see it. My appetite is also more comfortable with them like losing some games as they get this data. And so like, that's where I stand on it. That would be an opportunity for someone like Asar to get some more of those things. Even Ron Holland, like, hey, Ron, go get buckets. Can you go get buckets at the NBA level?
Here'd be I don't even know if this is counter, but like, it's a small thing. Do you think Asar is good enough at navigating screens to where you would get the requisite information that you need about Jalen Duren?
No. Like, no, you would be punting on that specific information. I don't listen,
but you need the Duren information sooner than you need the Asar information.
I would agree with that. And Pistons fans are going to hate me for this because like Asar had a really good game last night. He was very disruptive, all of that. I think if Asar's maybe biggest weakness defensively right now is screen navigation. Like, I think he has some real room to grow there. So, I mean, honestly, you know what they've defaulted to doing a lot of games? They'll drop early and then they just start blitzing. Like, they just start blitzing people. And Duren, he's better at it. Stu can do a little bit more of both. And then Paul Reed is like freaking awesome at it. Surprisingly, like Paul Reed's stalks are silly.
Paul Reed is really good when you can just like have him be aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah. Like he just,
here's the thing. Good teams figure it out. Like,
so yeah,
that's the issue with Paul is like, if you can't have Paul be like your long-term backup center, but like if you use him as a break glass in case of emergency change-up, like Paul Reed can do that for sure.
Yeah. So that's the thing is like right now they're living on this, like, hey, we're going to blitz screens. And then we have Asar, Ron Holland, Cade, these guys playing off the ball and rotating well and doing things pretty well. I see Rachel says, I feel like they already know Duren isn't worth paying. My one pushback on this, and I'm not here trying to defend or anything Duren one way or the other. All I'll say is I don't know that we give Jalen Duren enough for like the dumpster fire that was last season and what that may have done to his growth. I think about the difference between J.I. and J.D., Sam. I want to get your perspective on this. So last year, Jaden Ivey both of those guys started as rookies, right? J.I. got handed the keys because Cade got hurt. J.D. came in, played a lot. They come in the next year, new coach. What does Monty Williams do with Jaden Ivey? He sits his butt on the bench for Killian Hayes. That's the message Jaden Ivey got was, hey, son, go get better. You weren't good enough as a rookie. What was the message Jalen Duren got from Monty Williams? Go start every single game in year 2. So I think about it from Jalen Duren's perspective as, man, I must be doing everything right. Like, I started as a rookie. He got benched. I've started almost every game of my career. Like, I guess my point is,
I can't tell if you're like giving Monty Williams a compliment for the way he handled Jaden Ivey or criticizing him for
do not put those words in my mouth. You do not flip. somebody's going to aggregate this and people are going to crush me on Twitter. That's not what I said. All I'm saying is think about the messaging difference there. And I can understand where a 20-year-old Jalen Duren played his entire second season going, I'm doing everything the way I'm supposed to, because the other guy that got drafted ahead of me got
selective
benched.
accountability.
Yeah. And I don't blame him. He's 20 years old. And so I guess I give JD a little bit of a pass, and I shouldn't say pass. I give patience for the rest of this year because I watched the dumpster fire that was last year. And to your point, J.I. handled that situation with a lot of grace and maturity, and he did come out better because of it. I'm not saying it was right, but he has like really grown from that. And
he's been better this year for sure.
And he's been really good this year until injuries suck. That's all I'll say. No matter who it is, injuries suck. So,
yeah, no, I'm really interested to see what in the world Jalen Duren. Yeah, like I don't know what Duren thinks he's worth.
This is the question, Rachel. Like that's
does he
the
think
question.
He's worth 30, or is he going to be willing to take the like 15 to 18 million dollar a year deal that he's probably worth at this point? Like,
and it's really,
I'm not a Duren guy, so like I don't know.
And it's important to remember none of these guys were Trajan's guys. These were all, Duren especially was very much a Troy Weaver. The reports were that if J.I. wasn't there at 5, that Jalen Duren may have been the pick at 5 in that draft. So, those are all Troy Weaver guys, and we know how those can change things whenever it's a new front office.
It's absolutely true. Okay. Anything else on the Pistons before we go?
No, like I said, Cade's been awesome. The vets have done their job, and it's a fun, competitive team that's still not good. And I'm interested to see how it continues to progress. But they've been fun to watch this year.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to call out is just JB Bickerstaff. JB Bickerstaff is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. JB Bickerstaff has been incredible for this team. He's done such a good job. He's done such an amazing job of building this group out, of making sure that their confidence is high. I think he is probably one of the best young, coaches for young players in the league. Like, you look at the way he helped out Darius Garland, Jared Allen, all those dudes, Evan Mobley, kind of got them set up in the NBA. You look at the way he's helping out the Pistons now. I really think that this is, in a lot of ways, a really, really, really awesome coaching job. And I would probably have him, I think, is like a top 4, top 5 guy for coach of the year right now.
I was gonna say, is he quite top 5? I don't know. I think here's what's fascinating about this situation, Sam, is Kenny Atkinson is crushing it in Cleveland, and the guy he replaced is crushing it in Detroit. And it's just kind of interesting how those things work themselves out. Like how maybe it was the right decision for everybody, and it's okay. I will say, like, I get to go to the one meet. I think I already said this, but I get to go to the one media game, in Denver when Detroit plays there. JV was awesome. Like, just his demeanor, his personality, everything was really, really cool. The way he speaks and all of that. So, I'm with you. I think he's done a really nice job. You talk about teams that don't have this crazy defensive personnel. This team doesn't have crazy defensive personnel, and they're 18th right now in defensive rating, or 16th, up to 16th. So they've kind of bounced around a little bit, but
and that's on JB, I think, for sure.
That's what I was trying to say. It was like, there's a level of understanding that this team didn't have last year on the defensive end that they absolutely do this year. I think the biggest thing is the resolve, the way they respond to tough situations after a loss, after they blow a lead, stuff like that. They seem to always bounce back in a way I don't know this team did for the last 4 years, let alone last year. So it was not an easy situation to come into for him, Sam.
I agree with you. Okay. Where I want to go next is the 2025 NBA draft Q&A that we have promised the people.
Okay.
Because we wanted to do some draft stuff. So please, if you have some questions,
drop them.
By all means, come on in, ask some questions, and we will make sure to answer them in some timely manner. We'll see if we get to them all. But here is the first one. Egor Demin's shooting has been pretty spotty or worse. How far does that drop him? And I think this is a good opportunity just to talk about Egor Demin on some level. So Egor got hurt. He hurt his knee, if I remember correctly, recently, and then just came back recently, played Arizona State, and I believe who'd they play? They played Houston yesterday, and I did watch a decent amount of the Houston game.
Yeah.
I think what worried me more than anything with Egor, I mean, the passing was there. Like the passing is always there. The passing's freaking insane, which we knew and have known the entire time this year. With Egor, what I'm most worried about now is how he handles ball pressure. We saw it in the Providence game. We saw it in the Houston game. I actually thought he handled it pretty well against Ole Miss, to be honest with you. But we've seen it now in these two games where he hasn't been able to get anything for himself as a scorer. He's passed the ball completely fine in those games, but he struggled to get anything for himself as a scorer. And in the NBA, you really have to be able to score to be like a primary lead guard at the end of the day. So I am intrigued, but I do think he is more of like a later lottery pick right now, as opposed to like the top 5 guy that I thought he was in the early season, where I thought the shooting was going to be a little bit more real. And that I thought that he was athletic enough to be able to separate a little bit better based off of the shooting.
Yep. I'm with you there. I've started to move him down into the range you're talking about. I mean, to answer this, like how far does that drop him? The issue, Rachel, for me is finding guys that I feel that much more confident in to put ahead of him. I mean,
that is also a big issue for me.
Yeah. Like there's 4 guys I really like at the top. And then it's like, okay, well, like I saw a Ben Seraph comment earlier. I understand the Ben Seraph questions, but I'm like, so does Trey Johnson. So does VJ Edgecombe. So does Egor. Like all of these guys do. And so then it kind of right now it comes down to what do you prefer? What are you projecting? And I think I was thinking about this today as leading up to this. I love conference play. I think conference play gives us a really good insight into players because some of these guys can come in and they can catch everybody by surprise. And in the non-con, sometimes it can fly under the radar and teams aren't, you don't play them every team every year and stuff like that. Now you're starting to get teams who really know each other and the style of play and all of that. And so I think we start to get a lot of information. So I've bumped him down a few spots because I am starting to worry about the shooting and I love the playmaking and all of that. But if he can't score, are you really a primary on-ball guy if you can't shoot the ball? And that's a little bit worrisome.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely dead on across the board. So yeah, no, I would have him as like a later lottery guy. I have a mock draft coming this week. He is in the back half of the lottery somewhere. It's hard for me to find exactly where I'm going to slot him right now, but back half of the lottery.
I went on the drop step the other day with my guy, Jack, and I think I put him to Brooklyn. I gave him to Brooklyn, just said, hey, let him go create for all of those guys in Brooklyn. So
I love it. I'm into it. Okay.
Real quick disclaimer there, not because like Brooklyn, like we were just matching players with numbers. I'm not saying, I don't know what pick Brooklyn has right now. Just matching with certain teams.
They have 7 right now. So it's reasonable.
Yeah. Okay. Spot. Yeah. Okay.
From you and Ross, can we get a more extended explanation of why you're down on Will Riley? I don't get the Will Riley thing at all. Like I have never gotten it. I didn't like him coming into the year really. He had that big game against Eastern Illinois to start the year, but if you look at what he's done against good teams so far this year and against high majors, 5 points on 2 for 9 against Arkansas. He had 12 points on 4 for 12 against Northwestern, 5 points on 2 for 4 shooting against Wisconsin, 10 points on 1 for 9 shooting against Tennessee, 3 points on 1 for 8 shooting against Missouri, 5 points on 2 for 5 shooting against Oregon, and 4 points tonight, having played 10 minutes against Washington. He does not defend, and he is a streakier shooter than what people thought he was when he started the season on fire. That's what I said at the time, was I thought he was a really streaky shooter. That has borne itself out throughout the course of the year. 0 for 6 from 3 against Northwestern, 1 for 5 against Arkansas, 0 for 2 against Wisconsin, 0 for 4 against Tennessee, 1 for 6 against Missouri, 1 for 3 against Oregon, and 0 for 1 tonight against Washington. I don't like, if it was me personally, where I have him on my board, I don't have him in the top 60. If it was, I think teams are a little bit more interested based off of my conversations. I don't know how long that will last necessarily, but I am lower on Will Riley than what other people are.
I started off, higher on him. Like I understand the intrigue of this 6'7" wing forward that can shoot as long, all of that. He is very weak right now, physically, all of that. You mentioned the defensive struggles. I've kind of put him in a range on my board with some of these other freshmen where I'm like, okay, over the next month or so, these guys either need to establish themselves as legit first round potential, or they're probably going to end up off the board because the idea of them actually being one and done doesn't make as much sense. So that's kind of where I have him on my board, as much of a ranking of like, I've put all of those freshmen in the same spot, and so I can move them appropriately. So these next 4 weeks for him of conference play will be intriguing to me, but yeah, right now, like I don't see him as a first round prospect. And I assume if he wasn't going to be a first round pick, he wouldn't leave after a year. So
yeah. This is the guy I really want to talk about. Is Ian Jackson a late first rounder?
Where are you at with Ian?
So I liked Ian a lot in high school.
Okay.
I love the aggressiveness and the mentality and the confidence. And then early this year, I was like, I'd gotten some reports that like he wasn't playing super well in practices, and that it didn't look like he was going to be quite as impactful as Drake Powell and as the two guards, Cadeau and Seth Trimble, and obviously RJ Davis as well, being a senior there. And that kind of bore itself out early in the season. Like, you look at the games he played, like 5 against Elon, 5 against Dayton in Maui, 9 against Auburn in Maui. They have the overtime game against Michigan State where he starts to play well. And then right around the start of December, he's really picked it up. He had 23 against Alabama. He had 24 in the CBS Sports Classic against UCLA, 26 against Campbell, 23 against Louisville, and then 27 against Notre Dame. I think he's a very real scorer. I've always loved the aggressive mentality that he brings to the table. At some point, I would like to see him pass the ball just once. Passing would be good in my opinion. But yeah, right around the late first right now is where I would have him.
I have him at 34 on my board right now. So in that same realm, he's in that tier. I have some pretty big tiers right now of like guys I think are for sure first round picks, and then the next tier of like potential first round picks. But yeah, bucket getter, has some handle, has some wiggle. Like you said, I wish he would use that to create for his teammates at times, but really scoring the ball well. And whenever you're shooting 50-40 from the field, that's very, very intriguing. So, I feel like I stayed a little lower on Ian until he really started to, show that scoring ability, especially just at his size, right? I'm always a little bit nervous at that size, 6'4", or do we think he's a solid 6'4"?
Yeah.
Okay.
6'3.5" ish.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't have in my notes. Usually I'll make a note, like I think a player is actually shorter or taller than that. I don't have that in my notes. So that makes me feel like I trust the 6'4" right now or something close to it. So yeah.
Okay. Let's get into just some like random bigs now, because this is something I've been thinking about a lot over the last little while. Really this weekend, as I was putting together the mock draft, was like, okay, what do I do with some of these bigs?
Yes.
From Noah Casper, is Thomas Sorber a one and done?
Yes.
I think maybe is what I would say.
Do you have him in your first round yet?
I do.
I
have him near the end.
Same.
I'm interested. What do you think the offensive role is?
Yeah, so that's interesting because probably not a lob threat, right? Like it's not this your prototypical.
I would argue definitely not a lob threat.
Okay. Not a crazy vertical pop guy. I'll say it politically correct. No, you're right. Like that's not real there, but it's like the finesse, the skill. Can he really shoot it? I think he can pass. I think I'm interested in the passing. And I think I'm interested in his ability to put the ball on the deck and operate DHOs and do those type of things. I do have here, and this is to your point, I'm not fully sure what the scoring package is, but he is skilled. So I'm interested. And then the defensive end of the floor, like definitely interested there as well with some of the stock numbers, blocks, steals, all of that, especially for a freshman. So I have him at the back end of the first round right now, where I assume he would stay in if this continues to be how he plays.
I mean, the nice thing is like he's willing to take threes. He just has missed the last 12 that he's taken in the last 5 games. Like, I think he probably can shoot better than that, but I wouldn't say I trust him as a shooter. Like, I don't know that the touch is so good where I'm like, oh yeah, like this guy's definitely going to shoot it at the end of the day. He reminds me a lot of Xavier Tillman. I think is like the name that comes up, like a Xavier Tillman with like better footwork maybe, or just like more like overall offensive skill around the basket. I say that as a compliment as well. Like I loved Xavier Tillman coming into the draft. I had a first round grade on Xavier Tillman and he went in the second. Like I was very, very high on him. I love the defensive, reactivity, I think is the way to put it. Like he makes plays on that end. He does protect the rim at a level like slightly better than what his size would typically indicate. I do just wonder what the offensive role is at the end of the day, which is probably why to me he's not like a lottery guy. I would like to see him finish better and more consistently around the basket. Like he did struggle, it felt like, with Kalkbrenner to me and with that Creighton team. Like they kicked the shit out of Creighton, but he went 4 for 14 in that game. Only had 8 points. Against Xavier this weekend, he had 12 points on 12 shots. Against Syracuse, he had 16 points on 16 shots. Against West Virginia, he had 13 points on 9 shots and 44% from the field. And then against Notre Dame, he had 12 points on 3 for 9 from the field. Right. So I'm really, really intrigued by the defensive ability. I think he moves his feet well for a guy that is that big.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. So like he was a guy that was a little bit heavier even in high school and has brought the weight down even for like, I would be interested to see if he can bring the weight down like even further a little bit and see if that can continue to add to like his potential switchability maybe down the road. Like I think that there are some real things that he could bring to the table. I like him. So here's a name that we also got asked about. Do you like him or Common Maluwak more?
I still have Malawach higher right now, but I'll be honest, that has to do with what I was before the season started, and I have had to eat crow on Common thus far and move him down my board.
Yeah, I'm not a look, that I've never
I know
really
you're
been
not
a Common guy.
Yeah.
But even still, like Common's tools are way better than Sorber's.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's if you think you can teach Maluwak to catch and to finish, like there's a lot there. Like I've actually really liked Common's switchability this year. Like he's shown like a lot out on the perimeter where he can like fly around. So yeah, in general, I think that these two are pretty close. I have Sorber like in the like 20s right now, like right in the 20s. I would say.
I have him there as well. The other thing I want to mention, you talk about the defense. I think one reason why he is so disruptive defensively, he contests with verticality very well, and he contests with both hands. And a young big that shows an ability to contest with his quote unquote weak hand or offhand always stands out to me. And he's able to do that with his left hand as a freshman in college basketball. So I think the defensive stuff is real. I wasn't as familiar with him as a high school kid, so that's interesting that he's actually dropped weight, which does make me even more intrigued with what he's able to do movement and mobility wise. Just really want to follow the offense here as we get into conference play.
Yep. And I do like Derek Queen more than Sorber. I will say that.
I have Queen. Yeah. So like I have Common and Derek Queen, just inside my top 20 and Sorber just outside my top 20. So,
yeah. What are your thoughts on JoJo Tugler? Really high block percentage. Where do you have him mocked? Could he play center in the NBA? This will be a quick one because we've answered about JoJo recently.
Yeah.
JoJo is like maybe my favorite player in college basketball. If not my favorite, like he's within the top 5. I think he's the best defender in college basketball.
Yeah.
I think it's either him or maybe I'll hear out Broome as well. Broome's ability to just like contest on the interior, control the glass, play some versatile coverages. Tugler is just like a total game wrecker on defense. I think he's unbelievable. He's like 6'7" with a 7'6" wingspan. Like I have him as a top 40 guy because like, whereas with Sorber, I have questions on what the offensive role is. Tugler, like, I just don't know. Like, I don't think there's an offensive role right now.
Yeah.
But Tugler is like a joke on defense.
Yeah.
He is laughably good on that end.
Yeah.
So
wingspan, high energy, motor, elite level defender. Elite.
I have a top 40 grade on Tugler right now. I don't know if that's enough for him to come out, but yeah, I am a fan.
Yep. I have him top 40 as well.
Okay. Overall question, Mithranudu. Shout out to Thrawn, our Star Wars overlord. Back up big in the back half of the draft, or is this something the teams will have to address in free agency or the trade market? So I'm actually starting to like the backup big like situation.
Oh no,
in the back half of the first round.
This might be the strongest part of the draft. This is the strongest part of the draft. I would not.
It's funny, like coming in, like we thought it was going to be really bad, but it's actually quite good. I think now.
I don't know that I love them as first rounders as much, some of them, but like there's a lot of very interesting names between Cockbrenner and Zikarsky and like there's.
Can we talk about the best one?
Who?
It's definitely Johni Broome.
Oh yeah. So I have Johni higher than those guys. I guess I was going a little bit lower. Yeah. Yes.
I have Johni Broome as a first rounder.
Like, I do
have
as well.
Broome last year in the top 40, and he decided to return to school.
Okay.
I think I literally I think I shared the draft guide profile that I had written last year on Broome. Like, I think Broome is a stud.
Okay. I was thinking like second rounders. Okay. My fault. Yes. Johni Broome. 100. I have
so
here's
the thing.
As well.
Here's the thing about Johni Broome. Everywhere he's gone, he's just kind of kicked ass. He kicked ass at Morehead State. He's kicked ass for 2 years now at Auburn. He kicked ass both at the G League Combine and at the NBA Draft Combine when he went to those. Like, I'm just a buyer in general. I have him like in the 20 to 30 range right now. I am a fan. Like that dude is a real dude. So
rebounds, defensive disruption. You mentioned the defense, passes it a little bit. If he shoots it, this becomes really interesting. Like probably, are we buying the shot?
Not yet, but I think he could at some point.
Yeah. So no, I like Johni Broome. He's a first rounder for me right now as well, at least in that tier.
Have you dug into French basketball yet?
In terms of who?
Noah Penda.
Oh yeah.
Thoughts on Noah Penda?
This
is a quote. Dude is built like a buffalo, has pretty good defensive metrics, and is fine as a shooter.
Yeah, that's a great scouting report. I have in my notes, unbelievably physical build. That's how I describe that he is built like a buffalo. That is my Noah Penda. I think he could be an advantage exploiter, catch and shoot, attack, move the ball. I think he can pass a little bit. Yeah, I think he's interesting. I have him in my first round, to be honest with you, Sam.
I do too. I have him right around 20 actually right now. Like I have him like, so someone asks, he's built like Yabusele. He's not, he looks stronger and the weight wears on his body better. I think he has like broader shoulders than Penda or than Yabusele. I'm sorry. And it kind of like filters down throughout his body a little bit better, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that I figured Yabusele would be a name that would get brought up quite a bit, but yeah, no, I think he's a good player. I'm very intrigued by him. I kind of I like these guys that build is something that I can buy into, that strength. And so, I mean, as the comments mentioned, like the shooting will be interesting. It is.
Yeah,
it
the
is.
shooting is the thing I believe in the least, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Yeah.
But do you know what I believe in offensively? He's an awesome passer. He makes quick decisions. He processes the game super, super well.
Mhm.
Like, that's the stuff I buy. Now, he's listed at 6'8". I want a measurement. Like, I'm not saying he's not 6'8". I would just like a measurement I would like to confirm where he's at height wise. Maybe we have that somewhere. I've like looked a little bit, but like I haven't been able to find one yet. The shooting is what I buy into the least with Penda, but I buy everything else that dude does.
Yeah, he has good defensive playmaking numbers too, in terms of the steals.
He's a
and
good
the blocks.
defender. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think he's a good player. This is a guy that, as I start to kind of fill out my first round, he's one that I like there.
Yeah. I also have him as a first rounder, like very, very clearly. He is one that I am a fan of for sure. Okay. Let's close here. Where are you now on Jeremiah Fears? Has been getting a lot of hype the last few weeks. So like, I have him in the lottery. I don't feel like fantastic about it. I do have him in the lottery. I do genuinely still think it would help his long-term development to probably go back to school for another year. But like, you can't do that if you're going to go in the top 10 or if you're going to go in lottery or wherever. I personally, like, if it was me, I don't know. Him and Egor is still like very close for me because I buy the passing of Egor like at a super high level. They're just like polar opposite players. Like, Fears is really skinny and really fast. His first step is awesome. He also has really good last step acceleration. That's actually the thing that like I get really impressed with most, is like he gets to that area like on his gathers like really quickly. I had like one NBA executive bring up the name Monte Ellis with me. That's kind of an interesting one because like Fears is not a great shooter. He turns the ball over a ton.
Yep.
I worry about what this would look like in the NBA next year. I actually genuinely like I think that Bub Carrington, for instance, and I had Bub at like 7 or 8 last year, right? So like I really liked Bub. I think that he is more likely to be successful early in the NBA than Fears, if only because like I don't really buy Fears all that much as a finisher yet. I don't buy him as a mid-range scorer. I don't buy him as a shooter quite yet.
Yep.
I think he has those. I think he could get there on those skills down the road, like for sure. Those are things that he can absolutely improve, and I don't mean to like rule those out long term. Like I think he has building blocks in all of those areas for sure. I just think that next year would probably be quite difficult for him to succeed in the NBA. Whereas Bub like had the mid-range game to fall back on. He had I think he's a better passer, frankly, than Fears is. Like, I think he sees the court a little bit better. He doesn't turn the ball over as much. So like,
I thought Bub really competed on the defensive end as well. And like, I don't know that
Fears does that.
I haven't seen it as much so far, I would say.
So like, the thing I would say though about Fears is Fears' first step, it like 6'4", gives him just like more inherent upside than what Bub had at the end of the day. Like, his ability to get downhill and create shots at the rim is really sick. Like, he is awesome at getting downhill and getting to the basket. He understands how to like get in through those creases and cracks in the defense. He understands how to find these little areas to be able to get to his spots. I think he's super, super impressive. It's just, I think that like the skills need to really improve for him to be successful early at the end of the day.
Yeah. And like you said, with him, I have him in the lottery right now as well, because he's productive and he's putting up points, and the steal numbers are really good, and he's shown these tools. And so based on where this draft is at right now with those guys, this is probably where he needs to be. And so that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, it would be an interesting discussion. What is better for him in terms of his development? Because we've talked about this a long time, and you especially, about how hard it is for young guards, right? Like how long
it is the hardest thing to do is be a young guard in the NBA by far.
And he is 18, like he turned 18 in October. So like he, it's like he's that make him a little bit old, 2 months older than Cooper, but he did reclassify, so
totally.
I don't know. I'm very interested, right? Like he shows a lot of things. Like you talked about the downhill. I think he even has some like 6 secondary defender navigation dribbles. He has some change of pace and nuance. Like he has some creativity and wiggle to his game with the way he attacks. And even though the turnover numbers are high, I feel like there's times I still appreciate like that he like lets the game come to him. He's not always forcing the issue, but I worry about the jumper. I worry about the things you're talking about as well. And what's the one thing he hangs his hat on other than that rim pressure, which can be hard as a young guard in the league?
Yeah, fuck, man. I don't know what to do. I don't know. I don't know what to do with him. He's a tough one. He's a really difficult dude to figure out right now.
And I think, I mean, again, I've said it multiple times. I'll beat the dead horse. Like conference play gives us a lot of information. We find out.
He is actually, that is such a good point. He's the player I'm most looking forward to watching in conference play right now.
Yeah. Like teams are going to scout that. They're going to say, hey, we're going to keep you away from the rim or whatever. And we're going to learn like, okay, can he play make? Is he going to be, those type of things. We're going to get those answers. And that's what's nice about it just being the 1st of January right now is we have a lot of data to collect.
Yeah, so Alexander follows up. He was the one who asked this question and says, him or Rob Dillingham? I probably would take Fierce over Dillingham. Like I just buy the physical tools a little bit more than Rob being like 6'1" and just very small. Right. Yeah. I think that'd be tricky.
Yeah. I mean, I have Fierce higher on my board right now than I had Dillingham on my 2024 board. So
yeah, I don't know what to do yet with Fierce. It's kind of the easiest way to phrase it. Conqueror asks, is Hansen Yang a top 60 prospect? On the edge of that to me, like right around that. I would probably draft him late in the 2nd round and find out. Like guys like him, guys like Danny Wolf, like I would not let them go undrafted. Yeah, I would say. Yeah, because bigs who can play with the ball in their hands like these guys can, like sometimes they just figure it out later than others do. And I would be intrigued to, take that as a developmental flyer, especially with Yang, because, Yang you can stash over in China for a year or two and like see if anything ever happens. But yeah.
Yep. No, that's right where I have Hansen. I'm a little higher on Danny Wolf even, but like I'm intrigued by a 7-footer who has the skill level and the mobility that he does. It's very intriguing for me. I'm not sure. I know there's a lot of like 1st round questions that I get. I don't think I'm there yet, but I would feel very comfortable taking Danny Wolf in the 2nd round and just seeing if it plays out. Like, because if he can really shoot it, then that's really intriguing. Or, in a scaled down role where he's not turning it over, but the passing is still a plus. That's really interesting to me. So
I think that's right too. I think that's where we're going to call it for the day. Jebediah asks about Johan Grunlow. I haven't dug quite enough into Grunlow yet, to be honest. Like I've watched enough to where I think like probably a stash guy in the 2nd round, but I would probably like to do a little bit more before I feel confident in that. Like I worry that he's a little bit skinny and like undersized. Like he has like Daniel Ticey kind of vibes to me. He has really good instincts and obviously he shot it well this year, but I just worry that he's like a little bit undersized for what the role is. So yeah.
Yeah. I watched him actually last year and I haven't caught up on it. So I don't want to speak on Johan until I have more up-to-date data.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Okay. Bryce, let's call it there.
Okay.
Tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah. So at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky. Again, I'll plug the Substack, motorcityhoops.substack.com. I do those Pistons game notes and analysis. I put videos in now. I'm going to start trying to include, like, if the other team runs a really nice action or something like that, include those as well. So if you team that you really like plays the Pistons, there's notes in there about them. I wouldn't subscribe, but maybe you check out that individual post. The Pistons Pulse podcast, if you're not already listening as a Pistons fan. Otherwise, Game Theory podcast right here with Sam Vecenie. Go be Bobbler.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. I have a breakdown of Jimmy Butler and all of the potential landing spots, or at least 4 of them, not all of them. And I broke down the situation more than anything. Like, I think that's the most important thing. Like, the 4 trades I came up with, like, I tried to come up with realistic ones, but this is a really hard thing to try and figure out, to be honest with you guys. It's a very, very difficult, difficult situation to figure out. And that's where everyone is on the team side right now. Nobody's really sure where the Butler thing is going to end. This week, I will have the mock draft, I think, on Wednesday. What else do I have this week? So, post-game theory right now. Let's talk about that. I am trying to figure out, like, a way to get it a little bit higher quality for you guys, so that, like, hey, you might be able to actually see what I'm talking about instead of watching a frozen screen as I talk through and draw arrows on the screen. I think I've found a decent potential solution. I'm going to try it at some point this week. We're going to talk about Alex Sarr. We're definitely going to talk about Cam Whitmore. Maybe I will do OKC Boston at some point. Like, that was a really fun game that I haven't watched yet, apparently. Like, we're going to figure out what we're going to do with post-game theory. That will continue, I promise, guys. It's just that I'm trying to figure out the quality side a little bit better right now. What else? Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecenie. Go subscribe to The Athletic. Go and what else? What else do we have here, Bryce?
Subscribe to the channel. We're just somewhere under 300 from getting to 15K. So if you are watching and you have not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes.
That's true. And the post-game theory stuff only goes up on the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Because I'm literally breaking down tape and not like, and I'm like watching things and like drawing on the screen and stuff. There's just like no reason to do that. There's no reason to put that on the podcast feed. So please go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Really helps us. Go subscribe to all of the social media channels that GMAC runs. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, Threads, wherever you are, we're there. I think that's all we got. So it's a fun 2 hours. We'll be back later this week with something. I don't know what yet. There's a chance I make you do a mock draft podcast. One of the next 2 episodes will be a 2025 NBA mock draft podcast. I just don't know which one yet.
They want Dirty Dancer. We always have trivia lined up, but 2 hours is 2 hours, my friend. So
yeah, we're gonna call it after 2 hours.
Yeah,
which is really my fault, because like I came back from, my wife's parents last night, and I was like trying to figure out, like, okay, what the fuck are we going to talk about? And I threw like 45 things at the wall, and
we talked about all 45 things. No, that's it.
Yeah, right.
The longest episodes are the ones where it's like, we don't really have anything to talk about. Let's just touch on this, and this. When it's like, hey, we're going to tell you our top 10 teams in the NBA. Boom, 90 minutes. Then we can do trivia, and it's perfect. So
we are probably due for another power rankings episode too. That'll be like,
I almost threw it out whenever we were looking for something to what we were going to do. So
yeah, maybe the next 2 episodes will be NBA power rankings and mock draft. Yeah, cool. That's probably the way to do this. Okay, so keep it locked here. We'll be back later this week. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.